What's happening, everybody? Welcome in another edition of Bets and Ball Games with Edwards and Greeson. Bet Online continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and in college basketball, NHL to UFC, head to Bet Online today. And don't forget to use promo code BELIEVE, that's all caps BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right, it is Thursday, a little after lunch on Central and East Coast, and he is Jay Greeson. What's up, brother?
What's not up, my man? I mean, for the love of snot, the coaching carousel hit an all-time spin cycle. I know we'll talk about it, but it's still a little bit flabbergasting that Bill Belichick is going to be coaching the Carolina Tar Heels. And that's just one of three monster hires or reported hires in the last 24 hours.
Yeah,
the transfer portal is careening off the edge. I mean, you can't keep up with the transfer portal fast. Twitter's not fast enough to keep up with the transfer portal.
And Twitter's real time. Right?
I know.
Yeah, it's wild, and I want to start with the coaching, but I'll track back to the coaching. Let's first just a second on bowl games, not specifics, just generalities. So going back like 5-6 years ago and beyond for decades, as we show our age, I always thought about bowl games as about location and motivation. And right when the matchups were announced, I wanted to get my lines made. And because a lot of times you will see line movement, no BS, like 7-10 points. I mean, there'll sometimes be a team that's favored by 4 become a 7-point underdog in the matter of 36 hours. But I have not, besides the CFP games, I'm not even trying to cap these games yet. It's all about personnel. That's the only thing that matters. Who's on the field and who's not on the field. And we're not going to know that until a while from now. You go ahead.
Well, not only personnel, but also staffing. I mean, because all of the coaching overhaul is happening too. I mean, so assistants are picking up and going, and that's kind of been the thing. And I can actually remember, I've always called it the Jake Butt reaction. Because remember, Jake Butt was a
Michigan tight end,
NFL tight end at Notre Dame.
Oh, Notre Dame.
And played in, this is probably a decade or so ago, and played in a good bowl game, but it wasn't a Notre Dame national championship year. And he totally shreds his knee, like a Willis McGahee knee shred.
Yeah.
And it not only cut short his NFL career, it dropped him from late first, early second to a day 3 pick, which cost him millions. And now you're right about the participation. It is an exercise in futility to try to make any type of bowl pick until the day before, because the portal's open to Arizona State is in the playoff, and they're having to wrestle with guys getting in the portal, like meaningful players talking about being in the portal, and you're in the playoff.
Well, Georgia lost a starting DB before the SEC game, right? Didn't he leave before the SEC game? I think he did.
And if we're talking, going to portal and defections and all of those things, I can't help but love Lane Kiffin. I really do. I'm starting to grow to the point that I don't think I ever want. At one time, I was desperate for him to be the Auburn football coach, and I'm an Auburn graduate. But I don't necessarily know. I don't know if he's ever going to have a team more talented than the one he had this year, and he underachieved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my biggest evaluation of coaches is if your team is greater than the individual parts, you did a great job. If your team is less than the individual parts, you did a poor job. Lane Kiffin did a poor job. But what he said about going into this bowl game and people in the portal and all this other stuff. He is so right about this. And meaningless bowl games are not playoff games, of course. But if you've got, this is like going into the wild card round, NFL players can declare for free agency. How does that even make sense? Can this not happen? Move all of the signing period to the early signing day. And then move the portal to Martin Luther King Day. And you get 3 weeks from MLK, that Monday of MLK Day, to the traditional Tuesday signing day, the first Tuesday in February.
And while we're at it, let's push the start of college basketball back at least a month. I mean, I'm just now getting to where okay, this is the second time I've gotten to watch this team, and we're already 30% through the year, and
a whole lot of their best games, their best non-conference neutral floor games. I mean, and I'll tell you a team I don't know anything about, and I've watched them play twice. Miami played Tennessee as tough as anybody, and they've lost 7 in a row.
Yeah. Yes. And
good luck handicapping them.
Yeah. Well, it's fade them is what it is. Cause, Larinaga did so good, Elite 8 team and a Final 4 team. And they made me so much money both years. And then middle of last year or early last ACC season, once the ACC started, they just went to hell and they haven't gotten out of hell. Anyway. All right. So we'll mention the SEC teams and bowl games, but let's go back to the coaching stuff. I mean, in a 24-hour news cycle, I mean, we'd already been hearing the Rich Rod stuff, but basically it all went down yesterday for the most part. And, on Tuesday, we're broadcasting Thursday. On Tuesday night, I got a text from an old buddy in Vegas I used to do radio with on a very, very regular basis. And I had not even seen anything about Mullen to UNLV. And he was asking me, could I do a radio spot and talk about Mullen? And then he pushed it back, and we just did it before we started this pod. But I mean, I love it for him. The first thing I said to him on the text was, I'd be worried about him getting another job. And then I thought about it in a follow-up text. I was like, but I mean, I think that's the reality of every group of 5. I mean, there aren't many Chris Petersons that are going to hang out at Boise State for more than a decade in the group of 5. I mean, it's kind of double-edged sword. If they go take another job, it's because they're killing it with you. So, and look,
so that's a fair return. They're taking another job, but he just had 3 years of having you on the fringe of being that team in the playoffs. So, I mean, everybody should be okay with that. I mean, it's like if the guy at Florida has 3 great years of success, but his dream is to coach in the NFL, or the guy at Auburn or whomever, that is what it is. I mean, those are people's dreams, but for them to reach their dreams, they're going to have to cash some big-time dividends for your investment in your program.
Yeah, like Vandy, if they can get a 3-year run like James Franklin gave them, if they can get that once a decade, they should be thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody can be mad if you leave Vandy for Happy Valley. No. And although I got to tell you, man, when the Belichick thing started to leak and started to really gain traction, if I'm West Virginia, I shut that down, because you're actually making a story-worthy hire, a hire that leading into bowl games, people would talk about. I'm not saying you'd lead Get Up or Unsportsmanlike on ESPN radio in the mornings, but you get a segment about Rich Rod and can he make it work, and how hit or miss people going back to places they've had great success has always been, more miss than hit. But you announced that in the shadows, or that leaks in the shadows of Bill flipping Belichick going to Carolina. And that is a rat fart in a hurricane, man. Nobody's talking about that. I mean, the only reason ESPN will talk about Dan Mullen, and I think that's a great hire for UNLV.
Yes.
I think that is a great hire.
Great.
But the only reason people don't talk about that is because Dan Mullen's on ESPN.
Right. And I think Mullen will be refreshed after 3 years out. And he's only 52. And after being in Starkville and Gainesville, I'm sure he's going to love some Las Vegas. But yeah, we got to talk more about Belichick. I didn't see until actually Steve Cofield, who's the radio guy in Vegas, I was just in the interview with, he said Mike Lombardi, long time NFL GM. He's going to be, I guess,
And for like the last 10 years, been on
decent.
like Visnon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and a gambling dude, and had a great show on Saturday and Sunday mornings.
Yeah, and they actually have moved him to the early morning time slot here, like I think in September. And so anyhow, he's a really good football mind. I don't know if they've officially said he's going to be the GM, but I would imagine
that's what I've seen. And I've also heard another name, Matt Patricia, could be in this.
Oh, well, I guess he's a good DC, or on some Super Bowl teams. He was a good DC.
I'm real curious too about. I wonder, on just like a tangent, because have you now heard the whispers that the Raiders may be interested in Dion as a coach, and they're going to have a lofty pick and need a quarterback.
Sure.
And everybody can talk about nepotism in that one all they want to, but in your next breath, you better start talking about the Belichicks, because a lot of these guys are making a whole lot of these moves for their kids. And I mean, because honestly, what is the most Carolina could, in terms of years, hope Bill Belichick is on the sideline?
What is he?
If I put over under 3.5, are you going over or under that?
I think that's the perfect number, and I think it's 3 or 4. We've seen a lot of him on TV. He doesn't seem old. I mean, he seems like he's still got great energy.
Have you seen his girlfriend? The blue pill is working, or that man is a heck of a lot younger than his age is.
Yes, I have seen his girlfriend.
Holy shit. That ain't Stephen Belichick's mama. That's still like her stepsister.
And where has Steve been this year with no Patriots?
DC at Washington University of.
Oh, I think I did read that recently. So he's dipped his foot back in the college waters. Okay, so that's good. All right, and now just a little more on Rich Rod, and here's the irony of ironies is that it was Pat White and Steve Slayton, the running back, and because there had been so much chaos because Darian McFadden and Felix Jones had beaten LSU on Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving in one of the all-time greatest SEC games ever.
Didn't McFadden run for like 380 or something?
It was insane. He was God, and if he had not gone to the Raiders, if he'd have gone to any other team, I still think he would have been one of the greatest running backs in NFL history. But he got beat up so bad on those dog shit Raider teams that by the time he got to Dallas, he was washed. But yeah, so that was 2007, and Arkansas won that thriller. Houston Nutt's last game of his tenure with the Razorbacks, and that set up West Virginia. All they had to do was beat Pitt at home by 28.5 points. They were favored at home, and a terrible Pitt team. I think Tyler Palco was their quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. And they beat them. Oh gosh, I want to say it was 10-7 or 13-10. It was kind of ridiculous. So anyway, West Virginia opens the season at home to Pitt next year. So there's an irony for you. And don't you remember when R-Rod went to Michigan, like I think he has like sisters in West Virginia and their kids, like his nephews and nieces were getting harassed at school. And like, it was ugly. I mean, his family like couldn't go back there for like a half a decade. So
Rich Rod is he's the rich lightning rod. I mean, he is honestly, I think there needs to be a 30 for 30 about how post 9/11 college football has landed where it did because of Rich Rod. Rich Rod has ripple effects and tentacles in almost everything that has happened. And the big part of it is he turned down the Alabama job and then they went and hired Nick Saban. So if Rich Rod had gone to Tuscaloosa, we're not 17 years into the Crimson wave of dominance and I think Rich Rod is a pretty good football coach, but ain't nobody Saban. Belichick ain't Saban. Hey, you want to draw up X's and O's, then maybe Belichick's a better football coach. Maybe he's better in the pro game. I don't know. There is nobody going to have a 17-year run like Nick Saban just did, and that includes Kirby Smart, because Kirby's now got to dance with the NIL, and that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the Rich Rod turning it down was one way it would have prevented the 17-year dynastic,
and
iconic.
Danny Cannell's dumbass dad is the other.
That's where I was going. The Dolphins evaluation of Drew.
Nobody wants to hear from you anymore.
Drew Brees' shoulder, so it screwed our Falcons and your Auburn and my Gators. Danny Cannell's dickhead dad. He gives the evaluation that.
I think that was a little harsh, though, Brian. I think that was a little harsh. Man, a little over the top. I mean,
I'm talking about my Gators and my Falcons getting effed for more than a decade. 17 years with the Gators, however many years Brees played in New Orleans. I mean, yes, dickhead. Okay, I'm completely comfortable with it. So he gives the evaluation that Brees' shoulder will never be right again. Way to go, pal. And so he goes to New Orleans, and Dante Culpepper, washed and 30 pounds heavier with that big old rear end of his, goes to Miami. And so Saban's tenure there sucked, and he goes to Alabama. Yep.
Hey, you mentioned and just because it's a tangent, and there's no way we can pick any of the SEC bowl games because they're at least a week away. But as a tangent, in the last 25 or so years, which was the better running back trio in the same backfield?
The Arkansas trio?
Arkansas's trio of Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, and Peyton Hillis was in that backfield.
Yes.
Or Auburn's of Cadillac.
Ronnie Brown, Cadillac, and the Brandon Jacobs.
Brandon Jacobs, who ran for 1,000 yards in the league with the Giants.
Super Bowl ring as well. Oh, wow. How am I supposed to pick that?
Well, I'm just here trying to offer tantalizing conversation where you're not insulting other people's dads.
Yeah, no, that is a tantalizing convo, and I've got to go Auburn. I got to go Auburn. But
I would go Auburn too, and my bias aside, I go Auburn for this reason. They actually had a fourth guy.
I was about to say they did have a
kid who went for like 150 in the Iron Bowl.
In the Iron Bowl,
yes. So that's where I go on that one.
Because they all were hurt, and the white boy running back had a ball in the Iron Bowl. He had a
game. Hey, I got a great recruiting story for you because Trey Smith spelled his name T-R-E.
Yes, I remember that.
And I got to be buddies with a guy who was on Tuberville's staff around that time. And he said, you got to go see this running back in Florida named Trey Smith. And he looked down, he saw how it was spelled, and he said, okay, fine. Well, Tuberville goes and sees him, and he goes, hey, you know that guy's white, right? We don't recruit white running backs. But eventually he ended up going to Auburn and had a great career.
Yes, he did. As did Lutzenkirchen. But was he a fullback or a tight end? Rest in peace, by the way. Tight end. Yeah, he was a hell of a tight end.
He was from Marietta, our old stomping grounds.
Oh, what high school?
Lassiter.
I remember I covered a couple games at Lassiter. Okay, so let's just mention these bowl games let's start with the CFP. I think people want to. All right, here's I made Ohio State a 7-point favorite. I made Penn State an 8.5-point favorite to SMU. I made Notre Dame an 8.5-point favorite to Indiana. So I think those three lines are pretty good. Although I do lean Tennessee if I can get 7.5 or 8. And I'll get to the bet online odds here in a minute. But the one that my line was off, which tells you who I like, I made Texas 7.5. I like Clemson plus 11. Here, let me make sure we haven't had any line moves. So bet online has got Texas at 11. So Clemson plus 11 is the only one that I've bet so far. Now, my Indiana automatic ATM machine, that I didn't play against Purdue because the number was so high. I probably want to get back to them. I'm going to watch that line right now. Bet Online's got Notre Dame 7.5. I would love for it to drift up. Remember, we're 8 days out for Indiana Notre Dame, but we're 9 days out in the other games. I'd love for Notre Dame to move higher, and if I can get an Indiana plus 10, or maybe hopefully Notre Dame will score first and I can get a live bet of Indiana at a better number, I'll be looking to take them if I can. I need more than 7.5.
Yeah, and I think talking about those lines at this point is about all you can really do, because we're going to reconvene with enough time to actually pick those games in a much shorter window. I was a little surprised that Ohio State is north of a touchdown. I was a little surprised that Notre Dame was into the double digits like you. I thought it was going to be right around 10. I'm real curious about that Texas-Clemson game, because that's the one that I really think could go off the rails and it turn into a butt whipping. I really do. I think Texas could show up pissed off and has got way more athletes, especially in the speed positions. And I did. Don't get me wrong. I think Dabo is going to motivate them. And I don't know if I had a better sentence in our time together this year in 2024 than last week, talking about how not only was Clemson going to cover, they were going to win the game outright. So Dabo could go in the post game and talk about this is us and this is how we do it. Because, dear Lord, that played out every step of the way. So
I had a good weekend. Georgia and Oregon were very good to me.
Georgia, Oregon, Clemson,
I had SMU,
Boise State,
but I didn't have much on SMU.
No, I went 5-1 last week. I'm
nice
on my picks in the Times Free Press at my 5-10 that come out on Thursday. 10-1 in the last 2 weeks on published picks on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to get to our NFL picks here in a little bit, but right now let's just kind of peruse through these, just quick comments, if anything, on the SEC game. So Florida and Tulane are going to play in the Gasparilla Bowl Friday, December 20th. Right now, or Florida opened 9.5, but Tulane's star quarterback, he has already transferred and announced his destination. Actually, he is headed to Duke to replace Malik Murphy. So when that happened, Florida got a pretty good bump. I think it was only 12.5, 13 initially, but now they are 14 at Bet Online, but there's actually a 14.5 at the Westgate. Now, I will say, Tulane also has, I mean, they're deep at quarterback. In fact, in Phil Steele's mag, Darian Mensah, who became the starter and had a really good year, he's listed as third string. They have the transfer from Oregon, Ty Thompson, who actually, he played, I mean, he didn't start, but he got into, 17 games in 2 years at Oregon. And then Kai Horton, when Michael Pratt was hurt last year, he started 3 games for Tulane, including the Ole Miss game, which they were winning most of that game at home until Ole Miss got some turnovers and some real good fortune to somehow even cover in that game. So they've got 2 quarterbacks in Horton and Thompson that, have played some football. So anyway, Florida at 14. Any thoughts there?
Well, my number one, I got a handful of bowl betting kind of, I'm not going to say laws, but some guidelines. And assuredly before Christmas, I almost always bet underdogs. And whether that's because it's small conference teams taking swings at big conference teams who maybe are less motivated. Now, in the era of the portal, some of these may have to be changed because, as you said, I mean, I would love Tulane with their quarterback if they were going to treat Florida like the Super Bowl. But here's the other thing about this one, and this one's different in that regard. And it's why they're more suggestions and not bylaws. I think Florida is going to show up wanting to play.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Florida had to really work hard to even get to the place to get those 2 extra weeks of practice and put the pads on one more time. I mean, and I think it's a kind of a credit to Billy Bob that their most recent football has been their best football.
And regardless of the quarterback situation, Tulane has played bad football. I mean, they lost at home to Memphis, and then they got thumped by Army. I'm sorry, I cut you off on your point.
Well, and I think Florida's got, and I don't know how good Billy Bob is, and I know you.
He ain't any good.
But I do believe this. I think he's got a bell cow at quarterback.
Woo,
and I'm not even just necessarily talking about his natural gifts. I'm talking about that guy in the locker room. You'll love this. I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but I've got a theory that I call the Tim Tebow theory. And I crafted this when I heard the story that Florida Gators back then would, before preseason practice started, would pick sides and have a tug of war. And 2 senior captains got to pick the teams. Well, one senior captain went first, and he didn't take a tackle, and he didn't take a defensive end. Tim Tebow's freshman year, he took Tebow with his first pick, and they won. And when you've got a guy in your locker room like Tebow was, who not only is your best player, and everybody can see it, but he's your hardest worker, you've got an opportunity to do special things. And I'm not saying DJ Lagway is going to have a Tim Tebow career. What I am saying is he's got that galvanizing disposition and charisma that I think can lift both sides of the Florida football. And I think they're about to be steps better than they were the last 2 years.
And one that made me think of one thing, and it's wide receivers in the portal. I tweeted this morning. He's ranked the 7th best overall transfer at 247 Sports Composite. And I've called him the most underrated player in the SEC for 2 years now. Kentucky wide receiver Dane Key. That's who I want the Gators to get. That's my number one priority. I want Dane flipping Key to wear orange and blue next year.
Well, he's the great grandson of Francis Scott Key, who wrote the national anthem. Well, hell, man, Billy Bob could just drive to Norman, Oklahoma. Have you seen how many Sooners are in the portal?
Yeah, and Razorbacks have lost Luke Haas. Oh man,
you can bring up a great talking point right there. If you're a diehard Arkansas fan and you're wrestling whether you should or should not stick with Sam Pittman, and then you look up and UNLV just got a much better coach than Sam Pittman, and North Carolina just got Bill flipping Belichick, and you're going, we're still left with Pittman? I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, and back to even before the wins over LSU and Ole Miss, I would have Gators would say, "Who are we gonna get?" I mean, go get the best coach there is. So you go get
them. And even if the wheels had fallen off, even worse than they fell off at Auburn, fell off to the point that they kicked off a speed bump and cut the AD's head off to the point that they've fallen off that badly. On a Auburn fan dream site, as you're listing, could we lure Saban? Could we steal Kiffin? Could we do? Nobody thought this big. Nobody went big game hunting thinking, let's go get Belichick.
No, they did not.
No. Kudos to the Carolina people, man.
Yeah.
Kudos. You shot big and landed. You are the guys who look like the rest of us and asked the homecoming queen to the prom, and it all fell into place. It all fell into place.
She said yes, and you hit a grand slam, and with that, we'll take a timeout. Are you an experienced entrepreneur looking to diversify Are you ready to bet on yourself? Are you an employee that's simply tired of the man? Whatever the case, let me tell you about our guy, Andy Ludecke, and his business, My Perfect Franchise. Net. Like you, Andy had it with corporate America. He was tired of answering to a boss. He was married with a kid, another on the way. He wanted to start his own business, did just that. Now he's got multiple businesses, and he can help you do the same. Here's how it works. You're going to go to Andy's website, myperfectfranchise.net. You're going to set up an intro call, 1-hour consultation, 100% free. Andy wants to help you. You're going to tell him about your passions, your skills, your goals, the time and money you have to invest in this endeavor. And then Andy's going to figure out what sort of business fits your DNA. He's going to register you with potential franchises. And then he's going to find the best franchise that suits the vision and corporate culture you want. Before you know it, you're on your way and you're making greenbacks galore. So what are you waiting for? Reach out to our guy, Andy Ludecke, at myperfectfranchise.net or call him at 404-973-9901. Andy Ludecke, myperfectfranchise.net. All right, welcome back. Let's talk about some hypothetical lines for the CFP quarterfinals. And there's one that I absolutely love, Jay Greeson, and it is if Notre Dame beats Indiana and Georgia and Notre Dame play in New Orleans on the night of New Year's Day, so obviously January 1st. Notre Dame is favored by 1.5 at FanDuel right now. And I don't care if Carson Beck plays or not. In fact, I prefer 100% Gunnar Stockton to an 80% Carson Beck. I would love Georgia plus
without
1.5.
question. I don't care if Carson Daly's taking snaps. I'm taking Georgia if they're going to be an underdog against Notre Dame, and they can play on Mars.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea of all the great things Kirby Smart does? He is a great defensive coach, especially with the secondary. He's a tremendous recruiter. Actually, now that Saban's no longer in the game, he's probably the best recruiter in college football. But nobody galvanizes the elite talent in a locker room that nobody believes in you like Kirby Smart does. And if Vegas is going to give him the chance to tell his team with a straight face that they're an underdog to Notre Dame, holy buckets. I don't know any other way to say it, but that's a mortgage payment pick.
Yeah, it would be one of my bigger bets of the year for sure. All right, here's the other hypotheticals involving SEC teams. If it's Georgia, Indiana, it was 5.5 yesterday. Now it's 6.5. And by the way, if you have a FanDuel account, you can go bet these right now. I don't have a FanDuel account. I'm in Florida. I might drive to Biloxi next week just to make this bet if it remains. And that's a 3-hour drive, 6 hours total. I might drive there to make that bet because I do not think it will be that line coming out of the Notre Dame Indiana game. And obviously, if you make a bet on these hypotheticals, the matchup doesn't materialize, then it's just a no play. But Georgia is 6.5 to Indiana. That would be in New Orleans as well. Tennessee to Oregon. Oh, gosh, I'm not looking at the bracket. I want to say it's Fiesta Bowl, but don't quote me. Tennessee's plus 4.5 to Oregon. And Texas is 13.5 to Arizona State.
Oregon is in the Rose Bowl. Arizona State's in the Peach Bowl, and Boise State's in the Fiesta.
Okay. Wow, that's major location advantage if Arizona State's got to go all the way to Atlanta. Nevertheless, Texas at 13.5. Give me the Sun Devils there. Any of those appeal to you? Any of those?
Well, I saw those either earlier this morning or yesterday afternoon as they were being bandied about. And the one that jumped off the page to me was the one you talked about, that I don't know if I'm probably taking Georgia in points against every team in the 12-team field.
Yeah.
So especially Notre Dame, but
especially Notre Dame.
And you don't think that group of Bulldog folks aren't going to travel to New Orleans?
Oh, they'll be there. They'll be there.
No, I don't know. I don't know if Boise State should be collecting points from SMU. I think that's a coin flip game.
I agree with that. And Boise State's plus 11.5 to
Yeah,
Penn
that's too
State.
many.
Yeah, you can't. No. I mean, they should have beaten Oregon in Eugene. And
Well, and this is, you and I have talked about this, that I think being a 5 through 8 seed is better for your program and your fan base because you get a home game. This is where rest actually will matter, because a whole lot of these teams are going to spend a whole lot of energy next weekend to get to New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
Yeah. Hey, quarterback advantage, Ohio State, Tennessee. Got to go Nico, right?
Absolutely, you go Nico. But every other, well, not Dylan Sampson. Running backs maybe a slight edge Tennessee, but dear Lord, man, Ohio State may have four NFL guys in their wide receiver room.
Hey, head coaching advantage.
That's the biggest advantage Tennessee has.
Yeah. Yes. I'm starting to talk myself into liking Tennessee. As long as it's 7 and a hook, which I believe it is.
The thing that scares me, though, and see, I think you can make the thing that scares me is how cold it's going to be. And no, I'm not so worried about the home field, because if Tennessee can start fast, there's so many people in Buckeye Nation who are so pissed off at Ryan Day that they're going to hear third down boos on a draw call. I mean, and you don't want that. I mean, that then becomes a home field disadvantage.
If Tennessee wins that game outright, the chances of Ryan Day being fired the next day are 1,000,000%. Or the next 72 hours after that game. 1 million.
A little high. I mean, I think 1,000,000% is a little high, just because.
What about 99.9?
Possible. You sound like that high school kid going well, coach wanted us to give 150%. And I'm thinking, okay, explain that to me in the physical realm of science.
All right, well, you explain to me what the chances are. He'll be fired in the 72 hours, if not 24, after a loss.
Well, you know what? He's made a ton of money. He's got a bright future as the Greeson Formula beard commercial model, because I don't know how you get a beard that black. Well, I mean, you got to be dyeing that puppy. I mean, for God's sakes, the Pirate Blackbeard's beard was not that black.
Yeah. Oh, he's so dead meat if he loses that game. All right. I got 3 NFL plays I want to share. Commanders, let's buy. I got it a clean 7 early in the week, -7 off the bye week at New Orleans. Either Hayner or Spencer Rattler will be quarterbacking for New Orleans with Carr out. I actually got the Lions -125 on the money line on Monday. It's now up to 2.5. I still love it at 3 or fewer. Get your little team total over 27.5. Did you see that Bills defense last week? Get your team total on the Lions over 13.5 in the first half, and get some Lions in the first half too. But your stud hoss is the -3 or fewer for the game. And then I like the Chargers -3 at home to the Bucs. I know Herbert's banged up, but he's a warrior. He'll be there. The Bucs have won 3 in a row, but they've won over the Raiders, Giants, and Panthers, who have a combined record of 7-32. In my Survivor contest, the Steelers came through. I'm going with the Vikings at home on Monday night to Chicago, and I feel pretty good about it. But you know who I lost on last year in my eliminator, which was not mid-December. It was like mid-November. I lost on the Vikings at home to Justin Fields and the Bears. It's the exact game I lost on last year. Would you avoid it just because of that?
No, hell no. No, you're getting a touchdown in a game this late in December.
Bears haven't won
you're
since
getting
September.
To pick a touchdown favorite. There can't be much more than a dozen people left.
There's 11. We didn't lose anybody last week. But if Xavier Legette, South Carolina product, 3 people were on the Eagles. Did you see that drop by Xavier Legette?
Yes. I actually, the one NFL pick I would play that I don't normally look at them until Friday. I'll do a better job about that, especially when the bowl games start coming and going. I think all this drama, I think the Steelers I think they're going to win outright, and you can find it at +6 in some locales.
Oh, it's all the way up to 6? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. All right. Well, we are kind of up against it. Unless you had anything else there, Mr. Greeson.
No, we're gonna have to budget a little more time for hoops because. Quick side story that's fun. So we took the kids to Auburn last weekend and ended up getting tickets to the Auburn-Richmond game, and it was a terrible game. Auburn beat them by 45 and played
What do you mean?
well.
That sounds great. I know you bet on them.
Of course I did. But the night before, we went to a local sports bar, Baumhower's, and in walks the whole basketball team. Janai Broom stopped and took a picture with my daughter, and her favorite player is Dylan Cardwell, and he was already back there in the back, and she didn't want to bother him and do whatever. Well, the guy who owns the restaurant knows my in-laws. He went back there and got him. Dylan Cardwell comes out, takes a picture with my daughter, and she was beaming from ear to ear. It was a really fun, cool, what being a sports fan should be all about.
Are Tennessee, Auburn, and Alabama the three best teams in the country right now?
I think we're still in Kentucky a little short, brother.
I just watched the first half of Kentucky-Colgate.
Kentucky scores. The Kentucky-Colgate game was an anomaly.
I just watched Colgate shoot the flipping lights out against.
No. My two plays last night were Hawks plus a points and Kentucky-Colgate under in my daily email pick. So I had a great night because I just thought Kentucky was going to slow it down so much that they weren't going to zoom up the total number of points. I think Kansas and Duke are still there, but I think those are your five best teams.
Yep. Gators back in action on Saturday against
Bobby
Hurley
on the Gators.
Devils. Yeah, we're pretty good.
That's a top 3 seed team.
Yeah, we're pretty good. The drama around Todd Golden has slowed down, but it could ratchet back up as long as we remain undefeated.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's going by his first and middle name. His Christian name is Todd Golden Shower, right? That's what? No, is that not it? Did I misread that, Brian? Did I misread that?
No. I think that was worse than my name for Dr. Cannell.
I don't think it was.
I do. I definitely think it was.
Well, all right. This got an adult air of humor to it that my middle school kid can't watch this one because you're now calling Danny Cannell's daddy what everybody called Pat Head Summit's daddy. But that was his name. Richard Head was Pat Head Summit's daddy's name.
And a KU basketball player in the NBA, Grady Dick.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm Brian Edwards. He's Jay Greeson. Thanks to Southeastern 16, myperfectfranchise.net, and Bet Online. We'll talk to you next week. Good luck with your bets.